real estate has been the one thing that through all this time has sustained us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was joint venturing on wholesaling some deals, whether it was selling investors properties or managing their fix and flips. I did a lot of that too. My niche was out of state investors. And in 2014 was when we had started investing. We were kind of back up on our feet. And yeah, that's when I saw, wait, I'm helping investors make all this money. They're making a check of 40, 50 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting my commission of, 6 grand, 10 grand, whatever.
Yeah.
And at that point, and I was buying at the courthouse steps with a good friend of mine. So I had the full background. Yeah, and that's why I try to explain to people sometimes. I get, oh my gosh, you know all this stuff. I do. But it's taken me 25 years to compile my experience. It didn't happen overnight.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. I have Lorraine Beato. I tried very hard to make sure I said her name correctly. It is Beato, so that you guys can look her up at the end of the show when you get a chance for who she is. Let me give you a little bit of an intro to her as far as reading her bio, and then we will get to the truth of what it means to be an investor in real estate. Thinking outside the box and getting a transaction to the closing table is her specialty. With over 25 years in the industry, starting with Merrill Lynch in mortgage-backed securities, trading all the way to investing both nationwide and internationally. She knows how to navigate and sometimes complex and intricate waters of real estate. In an ever-changing industry, you need to have someone on your side who understands all the facets. And I think this is the part that excites me the most about our guest today. If you're a real estate professional and haven't started thinking about retirement or want to learn how to invest in the things you sell every day, check out her book. It's on Amazon, so it's really easy to find, guys. Flip the switch from real estate agent to real estate investor. So if you are a real estate agent, this show is for you, because I can tell you stories about my conversations and my experiences with real estate agents, which we'll probably get to. But let me finish this. The renovation in Europe was featured in the January 2018 Think Realty magazine, International Renovation Rock Stars, and I have listings featured all over HGTV House Hunters, Think Realty Single Family Investor of the Year in 2018, September issue of Think Realty Renovation Rockstars 2019, started the Atlanta chapter of WREN, which is why she's here on my show, is because she's associated with WREN, and I know her through the WREN platform in 2019, featured in Yahoo Finance in 2020, and a contributor to Think Realty magazine in 2021. Welcome to the show.
Thank
you. This is awesome. I love it. So I know I'm going to ask you your background, and I'm glad to have you here. And I know I'm interrupting, but I can't tell you how excited I am about the concept of real estate agents understanding how to be real estate investors. I think that is practically a cause, right? It's like, it's not just, gee, that's a good idea. It's a movement. It's a cause. And I will tell you my stories as we go along, but let's start with you. What is it? I read your bio. I get it. But why don't you tell me from your perspective, what is your background in real estate?
So my background is pretty comprehensive, as you saw. I started on the mortgage-backed securities trading floor, so in mortgages. And so I understand that whole side. I was an appraiser in New York. So I worked full-time, did appraisals on the weekends, and because I loved it. And got my license out of college, literally like the month after I graduated with my girlfriend. She's like, let's go get our real estate license. It wasn't anything I had ever planned on doing. And I said, sure, no problem. And we did. I just never sold in New York. I then learned that I really liked, appraisals intrigued me. So I kind of went down that road, was a loan officer for a little bit. And when we moved to Atlanta, I'm now in Atlanta. I'm originally from New York. It was just 25 years last week, actually, that we moved to Atlanta. And, I was like, this is great. I get to be a stay-at-home mom. It's what I wanted to do. My daughter was 20 months old. I worked the rat race in New York City and Manhattan. And after about, 60 days, actually, we moved in January. In March, I was like, I'm going bonkers because we moved, it was a corporate move, and we didn't know anybody here. Like nobody. We moved to Georgia not knowing anyone. And afterwards, I'll never forget the day I couldn't find my daughter. Like, we're home in a house like twice the size what we had, right? Less money, bigger house.
Right,
And
Atlanta.
I'm
That's the
calling
beauty of
her
Atlanta.
and calling her, and I can't find her. And I'm like, where in the world did she go? And literally, I'll never forget this. I walked into my master bathroom. She hid under one of the sinks in the cabinet, like closed the doors, was in there because I could hear her giggling. And that's when I was like, okay, I can't, like, I don't think I can do this anymore, right? So I realized that there was reciprocity, and I called my real estate agent, the woman that sold us our house. And I said, okay, I'm having my license transferred. I think this is something I want to do because I had the flexibility to work my own hours. And for me, a big thing when we moved to Atlanta, we didn't know anybody. So I don't have any built-in babysitters. I'm an only child. We didn't know anyone, and we got a bigger house, but for a lot less money.
Mm-hmm.
So I could stay home.
Mm-hmm.
Selling real estate was going to be something to keep me busy. And then I put her in, childcare. I think it was 2 or 3 days a week, just for like 4 hours. It got me out of the house.
Right.
It got her interacting with, with other kids. And that's kind of how I started when we came to Atlanta. About a year and a half later, about a year and a half later, I was pregnant with my second daughter. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, I have a 3-year-old and a newborn. I'm not going to sell. And I had some crazy people that were relocating from Michigan that drove me bonkers. I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, I kept up with my CE classes. We purchased 2 rentals. So I kind of still stayed in the game, right? Just not 100%. And in 2003, I decided, you know what? The girls are in school full time. I'm going to go back into selling. I'd taken a bunch of CE classes. I learned about commercial. And so I kind of jumped back in 03, part-time again. I was at the office while they were in school because it was important to me for me to raise my children. For me, that was key. And at the time, real estate was it was extra. It was an extra for us. Mm-hmm. So it worked out well. It was like, okay, I got a closing. It's a bonus. Awesome. And a couple of years ago, let's see now, it's probably been 10 years at this point. My husband, we had a GM transfer, and we came here with General Motors, and he missed early retirement by 90 days. They shipped him to Michigan.
Wow.
To finish out his time because he couldn't early retire.
Okay.
And right before he retired, it was it was like the 07, 08 debacle. When the auto industry was in crisis, and he retired and then lost his whole 401k because it was all in auto stock. It was all in GM. And that's kind of when I was like,
right.
Oh my gosh, our rentals got trashed. The 2 rentals we had got trashed. He had, lost his 401k. It was just like everything hit the fan, right? And that's when I was like, oh man, I need to go back into real estate, right?
Yeah,
and really
do something. You need JOB in order to stabilize the family. It's just that simple.
And that's what we do as women, right? Yeah. And so that's what I did. And I stayed in it. And raised my girls and still went to their events, and you're at the event doing deals on the phone, and it's what's kept us alive all of this time. I mean, since that time he's had 3, I think with last year, 3 layoffs in a period of like 8 or 9 years, which was really difficult. He had been out of work for 3 years, got a job finally. I was so excited. I was like, steady paycheck, health benefits.
Yes.
It was July of 2019, second week of March. We're in COVID.
Yeah.
Company shuts down. He's out of a job again.
Yeah.
And I was pivoting to kind of go down my passion project. And I'm like, well, let me pivot back into sales. And so real estate has been the one thing that through all this time has sustained us, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it was joint venturing on wholesaling some deals, whether selling investors properties or managing their fix and flips. I did a lot of that too. My niche was out of state investors. And in 2014 was when we had started investing. We were kind of back up on our feet. And yeah, that's when I saw, wait, I'm helping investors make all this money. They're making a check of 40, 50 grand,
Mhm.
and I'm getting my commission of, 6 grand, 10 grand, whatever.
Yeah.
And at that point, and I was buying at the courthouse steps with a good friend of mine. So I had the full background. Yeah, and that's why I try to explain to people sometimes I get, oh my gosh, you know all this stuff. I do, but it's taken me 25 years to compile my experience. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And yeah, so here I am, right? I've done mostly fix and flips. That's the majority of what we've done.
Okay.
And we have gotten some rentals creatively.
Okay.
And actually just closed a client today who found me online, and it's going to be his first pop the top investment that'll be a $1.3 million property when it's over. So lots of
Okay.
stuff.
And you're representing him as an agent, or are you also going to project manage that for him?
Both.
Yeah. That's what
Yep.
I thought.
So he found me online on a property that another investor from California was losing in foreclosure. He was just upside down, 3 years, contractor delays. And he called me on that. He's like, hey, I see that you're an agent and you've got this property. And what do you think? I said, it's a horrible investment. Don't buy it. And what agent tells $1 million buyer, don't buy my listing, right?
Don't buy my listing.
Don't buy my listing.
But if you want an investment, this isn't for you. If you want
Right.
to fix it as a primary residence for yourself, then you're the right buyer, right? So,
Exactly.
right.
That's exactly what I told him. Because I'm like, hey, I would double end the deal. I'm like, and as people are like, are you crazy? I'm like, no, I'm going to advise somebody what is the right thing, because I'm not a one transaction person. I want a client for life. I have a client that I help them do 3 fix and flips here in Atlanta. They never saw it. I helped them with the acquisition. I project managed. I put it on the market for them. And then a year and a half ago, they're like, we're buying 92 units because they moved into multifamily.
Right.
Can you help us raise capital? What do you think? What do you think the comps are? What do you think about the neighborhood? And so they keep coming back, and I build long relationships. I'm not a transactional person. And so, yeah, and he was kind of shocked, and he'd send me some deals here and there. So we've been working together since July. And my husband wound up doing the hard money loan. And he's like, I really like your team. He said, you have this really, tight team. I said, it's taken me a long time to put it together.
Yeah.
And, I appreciated the fact that he told the lender, he said, I've worked with a lot of real estate agents. Most of them tell me what I want to hear.
That's right.
He said, I've run about 4 or 5 deals by Lorraine, and that I thought would be good deals. And she told me why they weren't good deals.
That's right.
And all of them more expensive than the one we closed. I mean, it's still 600 grand, but we were looking at 850 and $1 million.
Right.
And so, that's 300 to 400 grand less, but that's okay because I'm going to list it. And I told him today when we were closing, I said, a lot's happened. I may be shifting brokerages because I want to go international. And I should have taped it. He looked at me, goes, I don't care where you go. I'm following.
Yeah, no, if you got somebody who's such a deep resource, I mean, what's the purpose of the Real Estate Breakthrough Show is to try to represent the authenticity of what it takes to be in real estate and what it takes to develop oneself to be a deep resource in real estate. The purpose of real estate is to break through to a better life, whether it's using it as a profession, as a job, or whether it's using it as an investor to try to develop a portfolio. It's to help you have a better life. That's the purpose of breaking through. But to do that requires this gathering of experience and this gathering of knowledge. And I personally think this gathering of integrity and inner metal to be able to face a field that goes up and goes down. And, you'll have your backside hand to you on one deal and you'll break through on another. And you really need to develop both your expertise, but also your inner strength. So I know I sound like a broken record, but did I tell you inner strength and expertise? Did I mention those? Did I say that enough times? So you're right. It takes years and deals to develop that inner strength and solidarity to be able to say, no, 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 yes, there's the deal for you, given what you want and your parameters. If you were a different person asking a different question, I'd give you a different answer.
Correct.
So,
Absolutely.
So tell me about your book. I mean, I can't write a book. It's not my deal. I mean, I'm dyslexic. I do math. I do strategizing all day long. I talk to people. This is all good. Do not ask me to write a book. right? So tell me about your choice to write a book and why this, I call it practically a cause, why you feel it's so important. Because I agree with you. I think it's vitally important, but I want to hear your words.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because I hadn't thought about it. So a friend pinged me on Facebook a couple of days ago, and she's like, I want to help you with your flip the switch movement. And I'm like, oh, I like the way that sounds. I like that word.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything I planned specifically, but about 3 years ago, I speak at a lot of the local RIAs, and I've spoken for some of the local gurus, as I call them. And I've been on the fix and flip panels and whatnot. And I would just take pictures or pictures of our own deals, and I'd post them on Instagram. And I started having real estate agents reach out to me saying, hey, I didn't know you taught real estate agents how to fix and flip. And I thought to myself, I don't, but I can. Right? It's kind of like one of those,
but
I hadn't thought about it. And then I had a friend of mine who had written a book, and I called him up, I'm like, hey, didn't you write this book? And he's like, yeah. And so I kind of started down that path. And then I started he's like, you're the person in my book, like you're the real estate agent that invests. And I started down that path, and I started having people saying, you don't need someone else's book. Like, you are the person, you need to go do this yourself. And it kind of sat in the background for a while. And then I'll never forget, it was July of 2018. I'm trying to think, 2019, right? July 2019. Because I launched the book last year.
Okay,
I had a
2019.
conversation, and I've had several of these conversations, but one in particular, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and I talk about this in my book. And she's like, girl, I'm done. My back hurts. She has back problems. I've been in the car with these buyers for 5 weeks, and they can't make up their mind. We've looked at all these houses, and I'm going to have to sell real estate until I'm 70. And I'm on the other end of the phone going, what? She goes, I'm going to be 60 soon. And I said, yeah. And I'm like, why do you have to sell houses until you're 70? And she's like, girl, I have no retirement.
Right. Yeah, that's what she's telling you.
It blew me out of the water, because this is someone who comes from corporate America, right? Originally from Chicago, had a great job, transplant to Atlanta, I think, with her husband as well, and got into real estate. And this is someone who's been a multi-million-dollar producer, making well into the six figures for several years. And it floored me. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have any retirement? And in my head, I'm going, what did you do with all of your money? And then the other side of me in my brain, I didn't say this to her, was like, she's out to dinner every night. She's drinking wine. She's got the car, the this, the that, and the other. And she's blowing it all. And
she's spending it all on lifestyle versus developing investable assets.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that was kind of my push, and I had this discussion. I had gone to a CE class with a law firm. I was kind of telling them what I do and clients that I was working with and how I invest. And they called me out of the blue one day, and they're like, hey, can you teach your flip the switch class? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll have a class, right?
I'll figure out a class.
I'll figure it out, right?
Yes, I'm happy to teach it. When do you need me to teach?
Exactly.
Great. I'll be there.
And that's what I did.
How long do you need me to present for? Because that way I know how.
It was an hour. So they told me, they're like, look, we'll invite all the agents. We'll rent the facility. Yeah. We'll bring in lunch. This is pre-COVID. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I kind of created an outline. I'm like, okay, what is it the real estate agents don't really know or don't understand? And, it was so funny, because we go to this convention center, and I walk out of the ladies' room, and there's my former broker from Keller Williams standing by the door, and he gave me hell when I left. And so I walk out the door, and there he is, and he's like, Lorraine Beato, that's twice in 1 year that I've seen you. And I'm like, yeah, how are you doing? And they didn't treat me very nicely when I left Keller Williams. They were pissed.
And he's like, Keller Williams is usually a nicer firm to work with. So I'm surprised to hear it, but good to know.
And I was there for 10 years. I'd been there for 10 years. And he's like, oh, you must be here for a presentation. And I actually looked at him. I said, no, actually, I'm the presenter. And I was like, oh, that was like the best feeling, right? In the moment. So he's like, I know you're going to kill it, because I know you do great things. And so I'm sitting in this room with 30 real estate agents, and Keller Williams is having their bold coaching session in the room next door. And we can hear them getting rowdy and hyped up. And at one point I had to stop, and I'm very transparent. And I just said to them, I said, all of you guys are in the right room, because they're in there learning how to cold call, right? And hunt for business. And you're in here learning about creating a legacy and getting into financial freedom. You guys are in the right room.
Right. Exactly.
So I thought I sucked, right? I had a friend attend to just kind of, she went there to support me. I thought I was horrible because I'd never done this. I don't have a problem speaking in front of people, but I was like, oh God, I don't know, is this good content? When I got done, as I'm doing the presentation and talking about why investors offer 65 to 70 cents on the dollar, I could see the light bulbs going off in their face. And that was, for me, that was amazing. When we got done, I had so many agents come up to me and say, I've been selling real estate for so many years. I'm so glad you did this. You've totally gotten me to shift my perspective and think about building wealth through real estate.
Good.
And those two things were the clincher. And then I took the outline and then I just sat down in a week and wrote the book. There was no ghostwriter. I have my own personal case studies in there. And off I went, like, okay, self-published on Amazon. Let's see what happens.
But I think it does need to be a movement. I know this sounds super weird, but I want to tell a little bit of my story, if I may. I alluded to it because I was invited to speak in front of a commercial real estate agency. You know how they at agencies, because you know this, real estate agencies, they'll have a guest speaker come in to talk on a particular topic for furthering your education as an agent, right? And so this guy who had seen me and met me and had run into me before said, look, I just want you to come talk. Just come talk to these real estate agents. They deal with properties that are worth multiple millions of dollars and they don't invest. Just come talk to them. And I didn't have your platform, your thinking. I didn't have all that organized in my mind the way that you do. And I wish I had. And I wish you had been the one to go talk to them. Because what had happened was I walked in and I started talking and they started going, what's a hard money loan? What's a joint venture? When you say real estate meeting, what do you mean by real estate meeting? I go to real estate agent meetings all the time. What are you talking about? I'm like, meetup.com, real estate investor meetings. So I finally stopped and I went, how many of you guys want to invest in real estate? And it was primarily a male room. I will confess. I'm not even sure there was a female in the room. Just doesn't really matter, but I'm just saying. So how many of you guys want to invest in real estate? And how more than half the room raised their hand. We want to invest, right? Hey, they buy and sell multifamily all day long, right? I'm like, great, right crowd, perfect crowd. Because I'm like, well, then good, they want to learn, right? And then I asked the next question, which is how many of you have invested in real estate or have done some version of a joint venture? 2 in the back of the room. Back center of the room, sitting next to each other, 2 guys who had actually invested in real estate themselves. And I thought, and here I'm standing because I didn't understand this gap that you understand naturally. I had not prepared myself as a presenter or a teacher for the gap between what they've been taught and their deep knowledge and the willingness to step into ownership of what it means to be an investor. And that's why I go, yes, this needs to be a cause because they are right there. They're right next to it, right next to those opportunities, right, seeing them every day coming and going, whether it's a single family and you're seeing flips come and go that you could be quote unquote wholesaling or be a real estate agent that specializes in investors, which I work with. I work with a real estate agent that specializes in working with investors because he's a real estate agent and a flipper. And when he finds something he doesn't want to do, he has at least three or four different flipping teams he then sells to. And then he represents on the way in and he represents on the way out. Right. And he actually helps us run our numbers because he's a flipper himself. He understands the structure of the deal. Right. And I'm like, I would not be as nearly as successful flipper if it wasn't for this real estate agent / real estate investor that I work with that helped me be more successful. Is that a valuable person on my team? You better believe it is. So how do you take a room full of people like I was talking to and get so many more of them to be like you or like this real estate agent that I work with that works with investors? Because there's so many opportunities where they could be developing their own retirement. Like your friend who was 60 years old saying, I'm done driving around. It's like, well, you could have bought a property. You just didn't know you could. You didn't know it was so available to you.
And that's where I saw the big hole And, you know, I had gone shortly after I'd gone to CE class. I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll get into, and I was talking to one of our top commercial agents and I said, I don't know, I'm kind of getting bored with residential. Maybe I'll go commercial. And she just looked at me. She's like, girl, I have been watching you. This person has never commented on my Facebook page, right? People watch you all the time. They may not say a word, but they're watching you. She goes, girl, she said, I've been watching you. You have a unique niche and you are perfect because you know it, you eat, sleep, breathe it, you understand it, you're good at teaching. She said, you stay on your path, you know, and I hadn't quite finished them. And she said, just stay on your path because that I believe is truly your calling.
Okay.
And I'm very active in our internal Facebook page. And I would just see agents like ask questions and everybody's like, what does HML mean? Right? Exactly what I'm like, that's a hard money lender. They're like, well, what do I do? Like, what amendment do I use in the contract? Right? Because someone one time tried to do hard money on a conventional loan exhibit. I'm like, no, this isn't a conventional loan. They don't know because there's nobody out there teaching them. There's nobody out there
Oh,
advocating for agents to invest in the product they sell every day.
well, and they're not even, I mean, they're not educating them how to work with
Correct.
flippers or alternative investors, and they're not teaching them their own financial freedom.
Exactly.
That's like,
Exactly.
we like, come on. Like there's, I mean, it's, I mean, okay, let's talk about your meeting in Atlanta. I run the Phoebe Pasadena, right? So I don't run the WREN group, but I run a Phoebe Pasadena. It's a real estate meeting for investors, right? I assume that the WREN group in Atlanta is a real estate meeting for investors, and real estate agents come to it because they're investors there. But tell me a little bit about your meeting. I'm making assumptions.
No, you're fine. So REN kind of COVID for me personally with my chapter really threw a monkey wrench in things. I had launched, so I'm the only chapter, I was the first and the only chapter currently on the East Coast.
Yes, I'm aware of
And
that with WREN. Yep.
I launched September of 2019. Great. I was just picking up speed. January was one of my best meetings. I had, you know, several people sign up to become actual members. I had a note investor speak. February was another good meeting. I was really starting to get engagement,
Yeah,
and
right.
bam, COVID hit. You can't meet in person. You can't do this. You can't do that. And so I'm going to be completely honest. So we ran in and of itself, all the chapters started meeting virtually. In I think March or April was our first virtual meeting. And we've stayed on that platform. And unfortunately, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it's the time difference, because they run it on Pacific time. I have not been able to get any of my members or even my meetup members to attend any of the virtual meetings because I see that they're not.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really heartbreaking for me because when I took over the meetup group, there's 505 women in there. And in 6 months, I grew it to over 1,100. And everybody's like, this is great. Even agents in my office and people that I knew, they're like, I'm so glad that you're doing this. Like,
Yeah.
we need this for
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Because as you said, whenever I've spoken at these boot camps and the RIAs, I'm the only female at the front of the room.
Yeah. Yeah. It often is. It's me or maybe one other. You know, there was 40, I just spoke at the Intelligent Real Estate Investor Conference that's associated with the Phoebe, my network, right? We have the conference once a year. Not exactly 100% sure how it didn't get branded as a Phoebe conference, but the Intelligent Real Estate Investor Conference. But 41 speakers, and they were 8 women. And I'm like, that makes sense. It's about 10% or a little less than 10% of the industry, of the experts in the industry are women. And that's part of why REN got started, was because there really wasn't a space that was primarily women to be able, I mean, I haven't until recently, I have to confess, I haven't until recently truly felt that women and men need any version of separation, if that makes any sense, right? Like I'm like, an all men's meeting, who cares, should be co-ed. All women's meeting, who cares, should be co-ed, right? Like we're in this together, we work as a team, you know, got my husband, like all this stuff.
Right.
But I have started to notice since COVID, since the lockdown, maybe it's because I'm spending so much time with my husband, that it's like, no, like we really do listen differently. Like I'm grateful when I get to have that feminine space. And
Right.
I'm not a girly girl. Like I'm
Not either.
I'm so not a girly girl. Like I'm, I'm like, I'm a tomboy. I climbed every tree I could find as a kid. I can put on a dress. You want me to snazz, but I can, I can do that. But
Yeah.
it's not how I dress every day. I wear jeans every day. Right. That is my life. That is my way. That's how I work. And so, but it is important, I think, that there be this space where women can, be able to do their own sort of thing.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, exactly right. So I learned at a very early age, I started working for Merrill Lynch as an intern when I was in college. Now we're talking, this was in 85, right? Because I started right after freshman year. I was the only, there was one full-time female employee, and I was the intern. We were the only two females on the entire, we called it like it's not that the New York Stock Exchange, people think it's not, but this big ginormous room, we took up an entire floor. We were the only two women. And so I learned it very young, right? 1920, because I had an issue with a trader who was like the top Freddie Mac trader. Like he traded the pools of mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an issue that had come up, and he's like, you just cost me like millions of dollars because of this trade and blah, blah, blah. It was input. I mean, there was no internet, right? The trades were written on what was called slates. Everything was in pencil, the numbers, and then we would input it into the computer
You're
system.
telling people how old you are,
It's
honey.
okay. I don't care. I don't care. I really don't care. It doesn't matter at this point.
That's
but,
all right.
I remember when he came, I was like shaking in my boots. Like everybody was afraid of this guy.
Yeah.
And I'm going, no, I know how detail oriented I am.
Right.
And so I went in my drawer because we kept them for like a month. Yeah. And I pulled out, they were called slates. I pulled it out. I'll never forget this. And I walked down because we sat up top, and I walked down and I stood there because he was on the phone doing his thing. I stood there for what felt like an eternity.
Right.
And he finally hung up the phone, and he looked at me and he's like, what do you want? And I pulled out his sheet, and I had the ticket. They were little tickets that printed out. And I said, Ken, his name was Ken. I said, I priced this with what you put. That took everything I had in me. And when he looked at that, and I'm sure he was like, who's this intern? It's a female coming up to me type of a deal. I earned his respect because he looked at me and he said, from now on, you are the only one that touches my trades, no one else. And so I learned how to be in a man's world.
Yeah,
at a young age.
They're looking for a team member who can perform on their team. I am not sure, and please, I probably will get tomatoes thrown at me for this statement, but I am not sure that they are nearly as sexist as some people might say. Are they sexist? I'm not saying they're not. What I'm saying is that the best relationships I've had with men is when I understand they're looking for somebody to have their back on their team. You need to be as viable a team member as they are. You need to contribute something that is solid and complete and adds functionality to the success of the deal. And it's weird. Like women, we look for somebody who can work well together. Like we're looking for connection. We laugh together, even in this interview, we laugh together. We have a good time. We understand each other. We feed each other, right? In kindness and generosity of space. But when you're with a man, it's like, I don't care about generosity of space. Tell me the truth. Do your piece on the team. And if you can do that, I'll give you respect and I'll have you on my team. And it really is a different currency, but it's not like it's the currency we can't present as women. I mean, we're really multifaceted beings.
Absolutely.
My opinion.
And it's gotten to the point where, and like they joke, I had a hard money lender hit me up earlier today, and I've known him for years, and they call me Mama Bear. They all call me Mama Bear because they're like, she'll crack the whip when she has to crack the whip. But if you need someone to kiss your boo-boo, she can go do that too.
Because, yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes, because and it is the beauty of being feminine is that we can actually bifurcate into these compartments. I was studying this course about men and women, which I really, really loved, right? It used to be called Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. It's called PAX, P-A-X now. And one of the things that they said, one of the things that the men said on the panel was, it was terrifying to watch my wife yell at me in 1 minute. And then when my son walked into the room, turn around and be like this loving, gushing thing. And it's like, how do they do that? Oh my God. Right? Like, that's so scary. Like a minute ago, she was like, you know, Medusa, hell on wheels, right? She was reading me the riot act, right?
Excuse me. Yep.
But I mean, it is part of what we can bring, whether it's a position in the transaction that we're doing and we're good at that skill and that functionality and we fulfill that space in the team, or whether it's, you know, the energetic juice that makes the whole thing flow together.
Right.
Right. And we have that advantage. I didn't mean this to turn into a male-female conversation
I know.
at all. That was not my intention. And normally I don't have that conversation, but I think it's important when we talk about being a real estate agent and you can be an investor. I think it's just as important that you can be a female in what's traditionally been a male-dominated field and still find a very clear, comfortable voice. Right?
I agree. 100%.
Understand the currency is different. The way that what they need from you is distinctly different than we do when we're together as a circle of women. So, okay, let me move on. Let me move on because we're running out of time. So I promised you I'd ask this question. Tell me about your worst deal in real estate. And then tell me what you learned from it. Because like I said, if you had a horrible deal in real estate will hand you your backside and you're still in real estate, you clearly learned something from it. So tell me your worst deal. Tell me what you learned.
100%. So it was October of 2013. So you don't forget. October 2013, we did one of the big guru programs for 30 grand, right?
Yeah.
And we bought one of the properties on the bus tour. And, you know, they had the real estate agent in the room and everything else. We bought one of the properties on the bus tour. And I didn't know the Texas market was in San Antonio.
Okay.
And, you know, as we're going through everything, we made an offer and then they came back. And for some reason, you know, it's one of those, you go from 4 a.m. to 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and you get no sleep. And something about the comps that the real estate agent gave us just didn't sit right with me.
Okay.
So it was a long weekend. We came back on Monday, ran the comps, and I said to her, okay, I don't agree with your ARV. I don't know where you're getting 250 or 265.
Right.
Because I'm getting like 230. Okay.
Right. And that does make a difference, to say the least.
A huge difference.
Yeah.
So, you know, we came back, we terminated, right? Because we were in our due diligence period. So we terminated, and it was a bank-owned property. And they went back to her and they said, hey, have them resubmit an offer.
Okay.
Or they countered. I can't remember what it was. But anyway,
Okay.
it basically came down from our 200 offer to 185. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like that works.
Okay.
So we were there. The property was in San Antonio. We're here in Atlanta. We found a contractor because we know nobody in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And we had reached out to the guru group and said, hey, they're like, no, we don't do referrals for contractors. Mistake number one, my husband found a contractor and I said, where did you find him? And he said it was Angie's List, but it wasn't Angie's List. It was Craigslist.
Okay.
Hired this contractor and, you know, it's the 23rd of December, right? And he's calling us that he needs money and he needs this and he needs that because we've gone under contract, due diligence, all that. And I'm saying to my husband, I'm like, this doesn't sound right. Like this guy's like trying to cash the check at 10 o'clock at night.
The work.
He hasn't started the work. He needed a deposit. We gave him a deposit of, I think it was 3 or 5 grand to buy materials. But it's a Saturday night at like 9 o'clock at night. He's at like check cashing places because we're out to dinner. And I'm like, this doesn't, like, something's not right. Anyway, it was supposed to be like a 4-week rehab. Well, we know how that story goes.
Yeah.
So
I'm in conversation on a 10-month rehab right now. And the guy's like, why aren't you paying me in full? I'm like, it took you 10 months to do the rehab. So I hold you partially responsible for that.
So
go ahead. I apologize.
So we went back in January to do the asset, the asset protection part. We go there and we see that some work is done. And he's like, I need money to go buy the cabinets. And I picked out the cabinets and the grant. Okay, great. And then it's like, this will be done. And nothing's happening. Then I asked for pictures, nothing happening. Meanwhile, I had asked the real estate agent at the event, excuse me, will you be our boots on the ground? Will you check on the project for us? And she said, yes. And I said, tell me how much you want. Okay, because being a real estate agent, that's an extra job. That's not part of my job. And I said, how much do you want? And she said, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay me because I sold you the property and I'm going to list it.
Right.
And I'm like, no, but this is extra work. She's like, I live 3 blocks from there.
Right.
It's not a problem.
Right.
Okay, great. Time goes by. I start asking the contractor for pictures, and I'm getting a picture of the same wall in the living room.
Right.
And my husband's like, no, I'm like, no, look, this is the same. This is in the same place. This is the living room. So time goes by, keeps going by. Then the guy asks us for more money and more money for the cabinets. And my husband exploded. It was Valentine's Day. I mean, we've been married 30 years. I don't think I ever saw him get so angry in all of my life. She hadn't been by. She hadn't checked on anything. He hadn't done any of the work. He took all our money and the draws. And I don't know what he spent it on.
Right.
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 So long story short, we fired him, told him to get out. Someone locally said, give him time to go get his tools because he has his tools in the house. And then that could be a whole legal issue. Let him go back. My husband gave him 24 hours to go get his stuff.
Okay.
In the 24 hours, he took all the doors. He took the hot water heater. He took all the ceiling fans. He took the toilets. He took everything.
So he took the goods. So he actually took the materials out of the house and took them with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Including the bath, like the hot water, like I said, the hot water heater
Right
in the
here.
bath.
Right.
And something had sparked me. And we had already purchased the appliances because the house was supposed to be ready. We had like $2,500 in appliances. And the other thing that tipped me off was we had a Lowe's account and we had purchased materials when we were there. And I logged into our account for whatever reason. I saw things getting returned, the faucets.
Oh yeah. Right. And
I'm like, wait a minute.
No,
so
no.
my husband calls him and he's like, no, it was the wrong fitting or it was the wrong spacing. I had to exchange it. But my gut, look, always follow your gut. And I'm like, Rui, something's not right. Like something's not. And then I saw more things get returned. And I'm like, how is he getting this returned when we used our card?
Yeah. And how is he getting the cash when it should be being put back on your card? And it doesn't sound like it is.
It wasn't.
Right.
So when all this happened and he told him to do that, we saw that he took everything. I immediately called Best Buy. That was where we had bought the appliances. And I called Best Buy. I'm like, look, we've been ripped off.
Yeah. Do not deliver.
Paid for the appliances.
Right.
Don't have him come because we bought like the floor mod. Don't have anybody pick him up. They're like, Mrs. Beato, we'll go put him in the back. Because guess what? He showed up the next day trying to pick up the appliances.
Right.
So fired him. He stripped everything. We had to get new materials. Next contractor comes and goes. Nothing gets done. Third contractor, we finally get it done. It gets on the market. Real estate agent who was supposed to be my boots on the ground never went. I've been busy. I have this. Long story short, 3 contractors later, 3 real estate agents later, and dumping it at $200,000 to get out of it.
And you finished it and dumped it at $200,000.
I dumped it at $200,000 because it'd been sitting on the market at this point for too long.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody there to go look at it. I had a friend of mine drive from Austin to go check on it. She's like, Lorraine, it's full of dead bugs. It's this, it's that, and the other.
Right.
And we got a cash offer. We were in London at Christmas time because my girls were singing in high school. And I just said, take it, do it.
That's a year. You started the story with December 23rd, your contractor wants money. You're accepting the offer. You're in London for Christmas.
Yep.
That's a year.
14 months of hard money.
14 months total. Oh yeah. Right.
14 months with hard money.
Yep.
3 contractors. Then he threw a lien on the property. But he didn't do the work and he stole our materials. He threw a lien on the property. I hired an attorney.
Yeah.
And so I paid an attorney $15,000 to get rid of an $11,000 lien. The guy was self-representing, and so I was stressed for almost 2 years, because this dragged on.
Right.
So long story short, we lost $70,000 out of my husband's retirement account.
Yeah. Yep. Ow.
Boots on the ground.
So what you learned was boots on the ground.
If you're going to invest in a market that is not a local market, you need to make sure that you have someone that you know and trust, that you know will have your back. And if that person's going to go charge you, like I was willing to pay her, pay it. It is worth every single penny. My out-of-state investors, I have Atlanta market has gone through the roof. So I was at one point managing about 6 fix and flips for out-of-state investors.
Mhm.
They paid me $150 for every trip I made because it was in Atlanta. It's like 45 minutes without traffic. And I would get them pictures, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mhm.
I'm like, here's all the pictures. You can
Here's the
tell the hard
report.
money lender,
Yep.
you can get your draw. And they're like, it was so worth it because then I told them, I'm like, I lost my butts, so I will do this for you, but I need to be compensated at least for my gas and my time. I wasn't looking to get rich because I knew I'd have the listing, but I did have costs that I was incurring.
And $150 is what I have to pay. When I get draws on my construction, I have to pay $150 to my lending company in order for their inspector to come out, in order for them to approve a draw. So $150 is completely reasonable in my world. Like, that makes perfect sense. It does really confirm why you're so good at project managing and why that people can hire you for that, because you've lived through not having that. And I've lived through having I don't want to say crappy, but I guess I should call it crappy, like bad project managers, right? Same thing, like, oh, just didn't happen to make it by. Oh, well, what is it this week? Oh, what's the construction next week? I'm like, it's supposed to be you. You're supposed to know these things, right? I'm not supposed to be constantly reminding you. That sounds like complaint. So I'm going to leave that alone. So let's go back to the one point, and then I have one more question.
Yeah.
I've often, I just said it again today in my mastermind class. Somebody asked me, why'd you pick Indianapolis to invest in? I said, well, I picked 4 cities and and these are my 4 cities, and this is And when I found a team on the ground that I knew would work was when I chose my city, because any one of the 4 probably would have been fine. What you have to have is a team on the ground. And without them, your investments will be crap. They just won't work. If you're going to be an out-of-state investor, it won't work. And I've been an out-of-state investor for 30 years. I've invested out of state starting years ago. Okay, you ready for the final question?
Sure. Shoot.
So we both have had real estate been wonderful to us, and we've had real estate be really crappy to us. Why use real estate as your form of gaining your financial freedom? And what does financial freedom mean to you?
At the end of the day, real estate is something that anybody can do. You don't need a college degree. You don't need a master's degree. You just kind of really need to have some common sense and know your numbers. If you don't know how to run your numbers, go find someone that does. And I just kind of say that I landed into it. I didn't pick real estate on purpose. It's just been something that I've always liked. I've always had a passion for it. You can make money in the up markets and the down markets. I have people chomping at the bit, waiting for the shoe to fall with all the moratoriums and stuff.
Right. Yep.
And so you can make money easily. You can lose your butt, but you can make money easily. And you don't need a lot of money to get into real estate. You really don't. It's not like you're going to go buy a franchise. It's going to cost you $1 million or $500,000 to get into. And anybody can do it. It doesn't matter what your background is. And it's always been good to me. And it's my drug of choice is what I tell everybody. I've just been tied to real estate for as long as I can remember.
Okay. And what does financial freedom mean to you? Why, real estate helps us build financial freedom. You talked about it, being a real estate agent, you can use real estate to build your financial freedom while you're being an agent. Why even use real estate to build your financial freedom? Why not just have a pension fund? Why not just have a W-2 job and a pension fund that you put money into? Why own rental units, which you say you've owned in the past? Why do it?
We've owned them in the past and we own them now. And I think, people get into different investments for different reasons. I want to build a portfolio. I do want to build a legacy. Legacy is very big for me. That's why I renovated what was my grandparents' house in Portugal. And it's everybody needs a place to live. As far as land, God's not making any more. There's only so much of it. And it has sustained me. I mean, my husband, like I said, was out of work for over 3 years.
Yeah.
I got 2 kids through college with minimal debt because I don't believe in student loan debt. I think it'll be a debacle at some point. So I did everything I could to get them through school with as little debt as possible. Real estate allowed me to do that. And we have some cash flowing assets now, most of which I've acquired as an agent because putting a sign in the yard for the client was not solving their problem, right? Most of my properties I've taken over subject to. And so I've gotten into real estate with little money out of pocket. I'm building wealth. I have passive income. The properties are appreciating. And, for me, financial freedom is time freedom, which I don't have yet. And I'm a workaholic. Even if I have it, I don't think I'll stop.
Yeah.
And just living a comfortable life. I don't need to live an exorbitant life, but to live a comfortable life where I don't have to worry about, can I keep the lights on, just to go and relax. And for me, I want to have multiple properties and vacation homes. So then I can go vacation. And I haven't gotten into the Airbnb space yet. But that was one of the beauties during COVID. And I actually think I did a video on this. During COVID, we own in South Carolina in Bluffton. We went to Bluffton, South Carolina. We have a family home in Florida. We went to Florida. I have a property on Lake Lanier. So I was traveling, but I was still safe.
Right.
Because I was in my own properties.
You're in your own properties. You understand who had been there and when was the last time they had been there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, Lorraine, how do people get a hold of you? If they want to use you as a real estate agent in Atlanta, they want to talk to you about your book or your course, right? And how to be a real estate agent investor, right? Or whatever else it is that they feel like that they need. Lorraine Beato, Beato, how do they find you?
That's correct. Well, you can find me across all the social media platforms as Lorraine Beato, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can email me at Lorraine Beato, LORRAINE @gmail.com. That's probably the easiest. And if you Google me, you will find me because I am not that hard to find. And if I can help in any way, I'm here and more than happy to help.
So if you go to Atlanta, call Lorraine or email Lorraine, let her know that you're there and she will tell you the truth about what it means and what it takes to be an investor in Atlanta. Lorraine, thank you so much for being on the show. My name is Christina Suter. This is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show. You can find me on Roku, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, and a variety of other platforms, which I don't know all of them about. There's lots of free information for you at Christina Suter YouTube, or you can go to christinasuter.com. Thank you so much. See you next week.
Thank you.